There were three elderly sisters who lived together. You know the story's going to be good when it starts that way, don't you? There were three elderly sisters who lived together. They were 92, 94, and 96, respectively. As they got older, they were getting more frail and feeble, and their minds began to fade. One day, the 96-year-old was upstairs running a bath for herself when she put one foot into the tub and suddenly stopped and yelled out to her sisters, "Now, was I getting into the bath or getting out of the bath?" 94-year-old sister downstairs said, I don't know. I'll come upstairs and see. I'll come check. And as the 94-year-old sister was walking up the stairs, she got about halfway and she stopped suddenly and said, "Now, was I going up the stairs or was I coming down the stairs?" Then the 92-year-old sister was sitting at the kitchen table and she shook her head and said, "I hope my mind doesn't go like that when I'm older." And she knocked on wood. Then she said, "Listen, I'll be up to help you girls in a few minutes, but first I need to see who's at the door." Okay? You know, in this life, we're accustomed to age getting the best of us, aren't we? As we get older, there's feebleness in body, there's feebleness in mind, and we've grown accustomed to the end of all that feebleness really being death. It's a part of our, really the darkest part of our human existence. What we're going to see, though, as we look at the story today of Jesus and Lazarus in John chapter 11, is that even death doesn't have the final word in this life when Jesus shows up. Jesus is going to step into this scene, and he's going to interact with the most hopeless part of our existence, with the darkest part of our existence, death. And he's going to step in and he's going to say, "Listen, guys, it's not over yet." Now look with me at John chapter 11. We're going to walk through this passage together, start to finish. Know this as we step in. This is the final public sign that Jesus is going to produce, the final public miracle. Okay, he's going to do some other smaller miracles after this, but they're going to be private setting. This is the last public one that he is going to do aside from his own resurrection. And boy, I'm going to tell you, this is a big one. This is a big one. John 11, verse 1, here's what it says. "Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair." We're going to get to that next chapter, in a couple chapters here in John, here in the coming weeks. We'll talk about that story, but he's letting you know this is the same family. And Jesus interacts with this family a couple times throughout the Gospels. We'll refer to one of the situations in Luke later on in the sermon today. Verse 3, "So the sisters sent word to Jesus, 'Lord, the one you love is sick.'" Now, when we hear a statement like that, when that news would come to your ears, okay, one that you love is sick, we have a really natural response to that statement, don't we? When we hear that someone's sick that we love, we move right into action, okay? We take them to the doctor, take them to the ER, whatever that looks like for you. We try to step in and fix it, right? And oftentimes we try to step in and fix it before we ever run to Jesus with our need, don't we? If we're honest. Now again, there's nothing wrong with taking them to the hospital, nothing wrong with taking them to the ER. But I love right out of the gate here that we see Mary and Martha coming to Jesus in the first place when they find out that their brother is sick. And so the question I would ask you before we move on is this. When it comes to prayer, when it comes to bringing your needs to Jesus, is prayer your first response or is it your last resort? Because I love how Mary and Martha just bring this to Jesus right out of the gate. Listen, the one you love is sick. Jesus, we need your help. Long before they tried to fix it, long before they tried to manipulate it, they come to Jesus and they bring their need to him. So I really like Mary and Martha's response, at least initially here in this. But at first glance, Jesus' response seems a little odd. Look what he says in verse 4. I'll put it on the screen for you. Verse 4. "When he heard this, Jesus said, 'This sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it.'" Notice Jesus doesn't just jump right into action and fix everything. We see this throughout John's gospel. Jesus' hand is never going to be forced with any sense of urgency outside of what God the Father tells him to do and when he tells him to do it. He's not going to be pushed into anything before it's time. He's not going to be manipulated or work towards someone else's agenda if the Father has not given him clear direction to do so. No, he clearly and calmly just states, "I hear what you're saying, but this sickness will not end in death." Now, that's a pretty confident statement in a situation like this, isn't it? Now, you got to know in that culture, I mean, they didn't have modern medicine like we have now. They had some things, but very often things that today we could easily get a cure for with an antibiotic or something like that, people in this day would die from it. You would just fight it as best you could for a couple days or a couple weeks, and then you would die. And so for Jesus to have gotten this letter, this message from Mary and Martha saying that Lazarus is sick, he's in bad shape, and Jesus says, you know what? This sickness will not end in death. That's pretty confident. What Jesus means here is not that the sickness isn't fatal, because newsflash or, spoiler alert, Lazarus is going to die. Okay, that's what's going to happen. He doesn't mean that it's not going to be fatal, that it's not going to be a real death. What he means is it's ultimately not going to end in death. It's not going to lead to death, but it's going to lead through death, is what he's trying to tell him here, okay? So whatever sickness it is that Lazarus has, we don't know, but it seems pretty hopeless and pretty dire, the situation here, okay? Mary and Martha come to Jesus with their need. They send messages to Jesus with their need because it is outside of their control. They can't fix this circumstance that they've come up against with this physical infirmity of their brother. And here's the truth I want you to understand this morning, okay? This is a truth I want you to tether your heart to this morning, no matter what your situation is, because if you don't, circumstances and problems in your life will control you and will force your hand to do things you wouldn't normally do. They'll rule you if you do not tether your heart to this truth. Write it down. Number one, Jesus can see the beauty in the end when all we can see is the mess in the middle. Jesus can see the beauty in the end when all we can see is the mess in the middle. We're going to see that played out in this story today with Lazarus and with Mary and with Martha. And it's pretty incredible how God can do this in every situation that we face, even though it looks really bleak in the middle. I was watching Bob Ross the other day, the painter. You guys ever watch Bob Ross? That guy has the coolest hair and the coolest disposition of anybody I've ever seen. Like, he gets on there and you'd think he's either taking 2 or 3 Xanax or taking a visit to Colorado or something. The way he starts, hello everyone, I'm so glad you're here today. We're going to paint some happy little trees. And I love how when he starts painting the trees, he's like, everybody needs a friend. Let's give that tree a little friend. And he paints one right next to it like it's, he's just, free, spitballing up there. I love it. I love how he does. I was watching him the other day, and I've watched him before. I think it's actually really calming. It puts me to sleep sometimes when I watch him on YouTube. But when he's painting, when he starts off with that 2-inch brush he loves to use, he starts off making some, he starts painting the clouds. Like the one I was watching the other day was called Mystic Mountain. He always has funny names for him. I'm going to paint a mystic mountain today. And he starts brushing some blue globs through the top of the paintbrush, or the top of the canvas with his brush. And he's like, okay, these are going to be some happy little clouds. And then he goes down and he makes some other marks in the middle. And as he's painting it, within the first 5-10 minutes, I'm like, there is no way that's turning into Mystic Mountain today. That just looks nothing like a Mystic Mountain. And I think I could probably do what Bob Ross is doing right now. I could slap a little paint up there like that. One of the phrases and one of the quotes that Bob Ross is most famous for is he says that there are no mistakes, just happy little accidents, some form of that. And what he means by that is that as he's painting, something that may look like it's not where it should be, something that seems like an accident or a mistake in the hand of a master painter like himself can be turned into something beautiful. Are y'all with me? It's very much the same with our God. See, even though we have this small, finite perspective on life, we're down here on ground level. Oftentimes, situations in life, much like this situation with Lazarus as he's dying, we can't see what the master artist is putting together. We can't see the painting that's coming in the end. But Jesus, the God of heaven in human flesh, can see the end. He knows what he's creating, and he's working towards something beautiful. And whatever he decides to do, and whatever he purposes will always stand. I like what Isaiah has to say about it. I'm going to put this verse on the screen for you. You can jot it down. Isaiah 46 says this about our God. I love this. Isaiah 46, verses 8 through 11. He says, remember this, keep it in mind, take it to heart. Anytime a verse starts that way, you should do all 3 of those things. Okay, this is going to be important what he says here. Remember this, keep it in mind, take it to heart. I am God and there is no other. I am God and there is none like me. I make known the end from the beginning. He knows the end from the beginning and all the mess in the middle, okay? From ancient times to what is still to come. I say my purpose will stand, and I will do all that I please. What I have said, that I will bring about. What I have planned, that I will do. Listen, that is the God you serve today if you're a Christian. He knows the end from the beginning. And even though what you're experiencing right now might be like the situation with Lazarus, it doesn't make a lot of sense to you. Like, God, what are you doing? I can't see how this is going to turn into anything beautiful. Jesus can always see that beauty in the end when all we can see or witness is the mess in the middle. And part of that beauty is going to be Jesus, the Son, in this story being glorified. Did you notice what he said there in the verse? You can go back to it if you'd like. Verse 4. No, it's for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through this situation. Now, we've talked about the glory of Jesus and the glory of God throughout this series, but I just want to remind you here, okay? When you see the word glorified, think made much of, okay? But it's not like we're doing the making. It's not like we're, presenting him in a way that he's not. You could think more specifically about that word glorified in this way, that you're revealing God for who he really is. You're revealing God for who he really is, for his goodness and his power and his might. And that's what we're going to see in the story here. Jesus is going to demonstrate and reveal his glory through a painful situation that Lazarus and his family were going to endure. And I'm going to tell you this, look, if you're looking for purpose in life today, and everyone is, there's your purpose in life. Okay? Our purpose in life as human beings is to reflect the glory of God in every situation. And I know we don't like that. I know our culture actually teaches differently than that. That culture says your life's all about you and what you want and what you feel and your truth and all those nonsense things that our culture throws around. I know that's the case. And so it's like, well, I don't like that. I don't want to exist for someone else's glory. That's not fair. I want to do what I want to do. When you create your own universe, then you can live for your own glory, okay? None of you have done that, and none of you are going to do that, all right? So while we're in this universe, from our Creator God, given this purpose to glorify him, we need to play our role in that. And he says, look, this whole situation, even though it looks messy in the middle, I'm going to bring something beautiful in the end. It's going to be me presenting myself for how amazing and powerful and good I am as he, spoiler alert, raises Lazarus from the dead, because that's what's coming, all right? Let's keep reading. Look at verse 5. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was for 2 more days. If you're taking notes, number 2 is this. Not only can Jesus see the beauty in the end when all we can see is the mess in the middle, but number 2, Jesus is giving you what's best even when life feels its worst. You can rest in that. You can take that truth to the bank. Jesus is giving you what's best even when life feels its worst. Now, how do you know that? Because in this situation, John tells us, and I'm glad that he does affirm this, that Jesus does truly love Martha and Mary and Lazarus. Because based on his response to the situation and what he does here in delaying his coming to help them, you would think, well, maybe he doesn't really love them. Maybe Jesus sends word back to them. They're like, hey, Jesus, the one you love is sick. And Jesus sends a message back like, you guys thought we were closer than what we really were. We're not really that close of friends. And he says, no, Jesus loved them. But then look at the next word. Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Go ahead and go to that passage, or verse 5 for me again on the screen. Back 1, back 2, verse 5. There we go. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. What's the next word? So. What's the next word? So. You could actually put in there, therefore. Now, think about the phrase here. He loved them, therefore, when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was for 2 more days? Now, wait a minute, Brian. I think there might be like a typo in there. I think there might be like the interpreters, like the translators messed up on something there. I mean, he loved them and he heard that they had a need and a problem. Lazarus was sick and going to die, and he stayed? I mean, shouldn't it say that when Jesus heard, because he loved them, he dropped everything and ran to them to help? Because if he really loved them, he would take care of it. If he really loved them, he would fix it. If he really loved them, he would give them what they wanted. He'd give them exactly what they had asked for. But he didn't. He didn't come. Jesus intentionally delayed for 2 more days. Let me ask this question. Have you ever brought a need to God and felt like, is he coming? I mean, I've sent word to Jesus, like, I've got this need, Jesus, in my life. I don't know what it is in your life, something with your marriage, something with your children, something with your job, something financial, something with your health. You're like, God, I've got this cancer, and I've sent word to Jesus. I've been praying about this thing. I've taken my need to Jesus. I've cried out, and it just feels like he isn't coming. I'll tell you, I've prayed that way and felt that way before, if I'm being really honest with you. It's easy when we see God delay, it's easy for us to turn that in to doubting God's love, isn't it? Can I encourage you with this today? Don't let God's delay cause you to doubt. Don't let God's delay cause you to doubt. He loves you, and he loves you enough to actually do what's best for you, not just what you ask him for each and every time. Now, I'll give you this little out here. I think our culture presses us towards this doubt and this ideology of love. Our culture has a very wrong, we'll just put it that way really simply, view of what love is. In our culture, the conception, the misconception is that when you love someone, you give them whatever they want. You give them whatever they ask for. You clean up after all their mistakes. You fix all their problems. I mean, hey, even in our culture, if you love someone, you should affirm even their sins. So all in the name of not making them have to experience any pain or discomfort. You should affirm them, like, right? It's a wrong conception of what love truly is. See, love doesn't just do what the other person asks every time. Love does what's best for the other person. Are y'all with me? And so here's the deal. Sometimes God will allow your pain to remain because he's trying to do what's best for you. This is the situation here with Mary and Martha and with Lazarus. You see, God's love is most concerned with doing what's best, and because of that, his love doesn't always prevent pain. And here, the pain that Lazarus and his family were going through was what was best for them. And I know that's hard for us to wrap our heads around. And I know we don't like it because we love comfort, and I love comfort as much as you do, okay? But it was what was best for that family. It looked like a mess in the middle, but what it would do is drive them to a deeper faith in Jesus. It wasn't what they wanted in the moment, but it was what was best for them in the moment. And so let me ask you this before we keep moving here. Could it be that the pain right now that you are experiencing in your life, I don't know what it is. It could be cancer, it could be some marriage problem, it could be something with a wayward adult child. Listen to me. Could it be that what you're experiencing right now is actually the most gracious thing that your Heavenly Father could give you? Even though it doesn't feel good, even though it's not comfortable, even though it's not what you would choose, even though it's the opposite of what you've asked God for when you've cried out to him in prayer, could it be that that situation in front of you, God's allowing it in your life because even though it's painful, he's willing to let you endure some momentary pain for some eternal benefit and a deeper faith in him? If you are with me, say yes. So we see here with Mary and with Martha and with Lazarus, this is what is best for them. So listen, when God delays or doesn't do what you think he should do or doesn't answer a request the way you think he should, do not let God's delay cause you to doubt. He has your best in mind. Look at verse 7. And then he said to his disciples, let us go back to Judea. But Rabbi, they said, a short while ago, the Jews there tried to stone you, and yet you're going to go back? Remember the story? I mean, how many times have they picked up stones and tried to kill Jesus? And he slips away, right? Remember last week they picked up stones to stone him. They're ready to stone him, and he tries to plead his case with them once more to get them to believe. And then in the end, they pick up stones again, and he gets out of there. Like this is real. Like Jesus could die from stoning here if he were to go back. They're right in that. And the disciples, because they're connected to Jesus, could be stoned as well. So they have a very rational, reasonable argument here for not going back to Jerusalem. Look at what Jesus says in verse 9. Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours of daylight? Anyone who walks in the daytime will not stumble because they see by this world's light. It's when a person walks at night that they stumble, for they have no light. What's he mean here? So customarily in this culture, in this day and time, they would work for 12 hours while there was daylight, and when the sun went down, they stopped working. That's just the way it was, okay? Put it simply, there were no headlights on the tractors, all right, in this culture. They just didn't have them. For very obvious reasons. It was not safe to work at night. It was not efficient or fruitful to work at night. And so he says, there's a time appointed to work in this life, and then there is a time appointed to rest. So what is it he's getting at here? It's a little bit like what he said in chapter 8 when he talked about the time that the Father had given him here on the earth. What he means is this, that so long as he and the disciples are working according to the Father's will in what God is instructing them to do, they will be safe. Even though the religious people may try to stone them, even though they're going to raise up and they're going to reject him and maybe try to enact violence upon him, so long as they're doing God's will, they will be safe. See, Jesus understood fully and was submitted fully to God's will for his life. He knew that God had given him a unique purpose in this life that only he could fulfill. And he says, look, so long as I'm doing that, I am going to be safe. Do you realize you're the same today? I don't know what it is God's called you to do or called you to be, but God has given you specific experiences in your life so that you can fulfill a unique calling on your life. God has given you unique giftings and talents and education and the family and the place you grew up, all those things together to give you a unique calling and purpose that only you can fulfill in this life. Are you stepping into that, or are you shirking back in fear like the disciples were here? I've quoted this to students many times, and I've said it in here before as well. I love the great missionary Henry Martin, his quote. He talks about this, about fear. Okay? Henry Martin was a missionary over in India back in the early 1800s. He died, I think, in like 1810 or 1815. It was a long, long time ago. But he was a contemporary of William Carey, okay, the father of modern missions, that guy, okay, this great dude. He had a ton of health problems that tried to keep him from ministry and being a missionary. He was constantly in India under the threat of violence and danger, and people were like, Henry, what are you doing over there, man? You're crazy, sacrificing yourself and risking that to go reach these people with the gospel. You know what he said? He said, if God has work for me to do, I cannot die. If God has work for me to do, I cannot die. He says, I am bulletproof until God says otherwise, so long as I'm following his will. That's exactly what Jesus is telling the disciples here. He says, guys, I know on the surface it seems a little risky for us to go back to Jerusalem, but we're going to go back because I've got to go back and display my glory to these people, to give them the opportunity to believe. And listen, so long as we're following the will of the Father, we will be safe. It's true in their life, and it's true in your life today. I don't know what God's calling you to do. Don't sit back with the fear of man. Don't sit back with the fear of death. I mean, again, that situation is not really present for us today in America, thankfully. But don't sit back in fear and miss out on that thing that God has uniquely called you and designed you to do. If you guys are with me, say yes. Verse 11. After he said this, he went on to tell them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm going there to wake him up. This is Jesus trying to tell the disciples the play he was about to run, and they just completely miss it, okay? He's trying to tell them, look, guys, Lazarus is dead, and he's going to say that in a moment. Using the term has fallen asleep was really common in that day, okay? The Old Testament, they used to talk about people going to sleep with their fathers, as in they were dying, but they called it sleep because one day they believed that God would resurrect all those who had followed him, which is the truth. So they would say they went to sleep. Okay, this is what he's saying here. He wasn't trying to cover up or shade what he's trying to say here. He's being very clear. His disciples replied, though, in verse 12, Lord, if he's sleeping, he'll get better. Okay, just completely aloof to what Jesus is saying here, and probably also trying to further defend their reason for not going back to Jerusalem. Hey, he's just sleeping. He'll be fine. Let's not risk this thing and go back to Jerusalem. We don't want to die today, Jesus. All right, that's what they're saying. Verse 13, Jesus had been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought he meant natural sleep. Okay, they were a little slow. They didn't fully understand. Okay, verse 14. So then he tells them plainly, Lazarus is dead. He's like, guys, let me spell this out for you. I was trying to draw the play out on the napkin for you. Okay, I was trying to show you what I was going to do. Lazarus is dead. All right, he tells them very plainly. He says, and for your sake, I'm glad that I was not there, so that you may believe. That's a really hard statement to wrap your head around, isn't it? It says, for your sake, I'm glad Lazarus died. Jesus was glad that Lazarus had to suffer with that sickness and die. Now, let me tell you what he's not saying, okay? What he's not saying there is, oh, I was so giddy and excited that Lazarus had to suffer and go through the pain of this sickness and die. That's not what he's saying there at all. What he's saying is, I am glad that Lazarus died because what I'm going to do in response to Lazarus' death is going to bring me glory, and it's going to help you believe. That's what he's saying. It's not that I'm just giddy over people having to go through suffering. And so know that in your life. God's not up in heaven like, oh, yes, today they're going to face cancer. Oh, yes, today they're going to face this sickness. Oh, that's not what he's saying at all. He's glad because what he's going to do in response to the brokenness and darkness of death would lead people to see him for who he was, display him for who he was, his goodness and grace and power and authority, and people would believe as a result. Some for the first time ever and some more deeply than ever. Verse 16. Then Thomas, also known as Didymus, you might recognize the name Thomas, said to the rest of the disciples, let us also go that we may die with him, okay? This is doubting Thomas, okay? Which I think this is the truth here. When we get to heaven, doubting Thomas is going to try to defend himself, all right? He's going to say, listen, guys, y'all gave me this bad rap because I said I wanted to feel the nail prints in his hand before I would believe that he resurrected. I'm not doubting Thomas. I was ready to die with him. This is not, you've painted me wrongly, okay? I'm not doubting Thomas. I'm ride or die Thomas. That was me. I just think that's going to happen. I don't know. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. But he says, man, let's go die with him. He says, guys, let's get... I do love that about Thomas. And I do love that about the honesty of the gospel writers. For the skeptic in the room, these kinds of things where they go back and forth and a person is actually painted in two different lights should show you the reality and the truth of what the Bible says. That this is not made up. If you're making up the story, you don't give them moments of weakness, like when he later on is going to doubt Jesus. But it shows us this is a real person. And they waffled back and forth with different emotions. Sometimes they were ready to charge hell with a water pistol, and other times they were hiding off in a room afraid of being killed. I love the realness of this, and I really appreciate Thomas's honesty. He wasn't going to do something unless he truly believed in it. So when we get to heaven, we'll ask him what the deal was, okay? Verse 17, on his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now here's what you got to know about this. Many Jewish people were very superstitious in regards to this, okay? Jewish custom would say that the spirit of the dead person would hover over that dead body for 3 days, hoping to re-enter it. Now, I know it sounds bizarre, and it is bizarre. It's not true. But that's what they believed. They thought it would hover around for 3 days, and what they believed was that on that fourth day, which is when a lot of the decomposition would begin to take place, the face, I'm not trying to be gross, the face would become disfigured, all that kind of thing, the bloating and all the different things that dead bodies do when they start to go back to the dust again. Once the spirit hovered around for 3 days, on the fourth day it would see, ooh, I'm not going back in there, that's not coming back. Then they would float off into eternity or wherever they would go. Okay? Again, it's kind of crazy, but that's what they believed, okay? That it hovered around. And so what I think Jesus is doing here is he is leaving no doubt that he's about to resurrect Lazarus from the dead. Because if it had been within that first 3 day period, it could have been a resuscitation, right? It could have been, well, Lazarus wasn't doing well. His heartbeat got really, really faint. But Jesus went in there and he knocked him in the head and he laid hands on him and he got better. He was just sick and now he's okay. Jesus wants the people there in attendance that day, and he wants Mary and Martha to know Lazarus is not just sick in need of a resuscitation. Lazarus is dead in need of a resurrection. And he wants them to understand, look, this is the darkest possible reality in the human existence, death. And we're not talking just a little bit of death. This is 4 days in, body-rotting death, okay? And here's what I would say to you in this today. Jesus demonstrates right here in this, by the fact that he waits this long to interact with death, he is not afraid of any level of darkness. Listen, Jesus isn't afraid of the dark, okay? He's not afraid of the darkness of death because he has power over it. And I would say this to you as well. He's not afraid of the darkness of your sin today. Some of you maybe came here today and you're like, Brian, you don't even know the things I've done. You don't even know how dark and messed up my life has been. You don't know the messed up things I think. You don't know the things that I've participated in and the sins that I've committed. You don't even know, Brian. It's so dark. I'm too far gone. Listen, Jesus demonstrates in this miracle his hands are never tied no matter the situation. No matter how dark, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far gone the situation seems, Jesus says, listen, it's not over yet because I am here. And he's going to tell Martha in a minute, I'm actually the resurrection and the life. I'm the power. Keep reading. Let's keep going. Verse 18, now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem. For the exact people in the room that need an exact distance, it's 1.7 miles to be exact, all right? Here's the reason why I mention that. The proximity to the capital, to Jerusalem, where he's going in Bethany, it heightens the risk he's about to take in going back and doing this miracle in front of people because of the risk of stoning, okay? I very much think. The other reason I would mention that is that this was a real historical place, okay? For the skeptic again in the room that maybe is like, this all seems like a story. These are real people in real places. Like where Lazarus' tomb is, you can go there today. Like they know where it is. In fact, in the 4th century, they built a chapel over the tomb where Lazarus was buried and Jesus calls him back from the dead. There was a chapel built over, and though the chapel has gone away, it's gone, the mosaic tile floor that was in the chapel is still there. Like you can literally go stand on it today. Like, these are real people in real places. This was a real death, and we're going to see it's a real resurrection. Verse 19, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. A couple options are true of this. You may have heard this before, but in that culture, they would actually hire professional mourners, criers, to come cry with them and to make a to-do over the death. Okay, it was just customary. It's what they did. So Mary, Martha, and Lazarus were either really wealthy and could afford a lot of mourners to come, or they were a pretty prestigious, famous family in the area, a pretty well-to-do, well-known family, and people just came on their own. But that's what's happening here. These people are coming around them to cry and to mourn, and they're honoring Lazarus' death in this way. Verse 20. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed home. Now, Martha, we don't have time to go over to the Luke passage. I'll reference it in a minute. But we interact with Mary and Martha a couple different times throughout the Gospels. Martha was your type A aggressive type of person, all right? Most people think that she was the older sister of the two. Mary was the younger sister. Martha was the older sister. But Martha goes out and she confronts Jesus. You know what I mean? You know people like this? Like this was no like passive lady. Like she was aggressive. She was going to get in Jesus' face here. Look what she says to him. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Now don't steal the emotion from the text because you've read this verse many, many times. This is her confronting Jesus with a complaint versus coming to him with faith. Even in light of what she says next in verse 22. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. What she's saying is, like, I know that you could have fixed this. I know that you have the power. You have a very special relationship with God the Father. I believe that, and whatever you ask, God will give it to you. So why didn't you come and fix this situation, Jesus? Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Let me ask you, be honest. Do you ever talk to Jesus like this when you're praying? Jesus, I had this plan. I had this scenario laid out. I was going to date this person, or I was going to buy this business, or I was going to do this or that. And I know you can do it. I've seen you do it in my life before. I've seen you show up and do the impossible. And you could have done the impossible, and yet you didn't. If you had been here, you could have fixed this, Jesus. If I'm honest, I maybe not said that out loud before, but in my spirit as I'm praying to the Lord, I've talked to him that way before. And I bet you're the same. Oh, how small our view of our God is so many times. Now, look at how Jesus responds back to her in this as she confronts him about this. Her plans have been messed up. Her situation here and now has been messed up. And Jesus says to her in verse 23, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he'll rise again in the resurrection at the last day. She thinks he means the final resurrection, okay? The Jews believed in the final resurrection, which they well should, that God's going to call everybody to heaven to be together, right, in the end. That's what she thinks. She's still thinking about that. So she knows some theology, okay, but her heart is still focused on her circumstances in the here and now. Verse 25, Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Martha, do you believe this? It's really powerful what Jesus is doing here in this. See, Jesus is redefining eternal life here for Martha. See, it's easy for her to be focused on their circumstances changing one day in heaven when the final resurrection takes place, when all the pain and suffering and circumstantial things are taken away. We're going to be in a perfect place. We're going to be comfortable. It's going to be amazing. He says, no, you're missing the point. It's not so much about the what, it's really more about the who. And that's true for us in life, in this life, and in our eternal life. It's more about who than what, isn't it? He says, look, you're looking for changes to your circumstances. You're so focused on the fact that Lazarus has died and that you're in pain and you're mourning, and those are all very real things, but you're only focused on the circumstances and wanting those to change. And so you're looking forward to one day when the resurrection happens way out in the future and everything is made right again. He says, no. It's not so much about the what, it's about the who. He says, I am the who. And if you get the who right, you don't have to worry about the what. He says, I am the resurrection and the life. You have a relationship with me. I have the power and the authority, and you've got to remind your heart of who you have believed in. You see, Martha was so tethered to this life. Martha, as I said, is this type A driven worker bee is what she is. She was a doer, okay? There are things that need to get done, and that's the priority, okay? She's the person who can't rest if there's a dish in the sink or a throw pillow out of place, okay? You guys know anybody like that? Yeah, my wife. She's married to someone like that. It's me, okay? I'm the guy. I have a hard time resting if there's things out of place. This was Martha, okay? Martha was the woman in Luke 10 that was upset about Mary worshiping at the feet of Jesus while she was in the kitchen doing everything. Mary was the feeler, sitting at the feet of Jesus while Martha was in the kitchen making dinner. And she's like, Jesus, that's great. You know, Mary, that's great what you guys are visiting in there, but these jalapeno poppers aren't going to make themselves, okay? I identify with Martha. I get her. I totally get her. She's so tethered to this life only, so tethered to what's going on in the here and now, the healing of her brother Lazarus, and Jesus not coming and showing up to fix the situation. She's incredibly focused on her circumstances. And Jesus says, when are you going to learn that life is about who? It's about me. It's about the relationship that you have with me, who has authority over all things. And when you have the right who, you don't have to worry so much about the what or fear the what that's going on around you. Says, Martha, do you believe this? Do you believe that I'm that guy? Do you believe I'm the resurrection and the life? Look at verse 27. Yes, Lord, she replied. And I believe she's being honest here. Yes, Lord, she replied. I believe that you're the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. And so she affirms her belief. We're going to find out she still doesn't totally get it. Verse 28, after she said this, she went back, called her sister Mary aside, said, the teacher's here, and he's asking for you. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now, Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him, where she had come and confronted him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, those mourners, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and ran out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to go to the tomb to mourn there. And they were like, hey, we've got a job to do. We need to go surround her and cry some more around her. There they go. Verse 32, when Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, notice what she does. She fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. Now, it's interesting to me here that Mary and Martha say very similar phrases, but there's such a difference in their posture. Martha comes in this accusative, confronting way to Jesus. And Mary comes and lays down at the feet of Jesus again. And we find that to be true about Mary. In the other passages in the Gospels, Mary is at the feet of Jesus worshiping whenever it's dinner party time and things are going well. And in this situation, when things have gone dark, we find her at the feet of Jesus again. There's a sense of belief and of worship in Mary that's not present here in this story when it comes to Martha. And we know this to be the case because of how Jesus responds to Mary when she comes to him. With Martha, he attempts to reason with her and to set her straight. Look what he does with Mary in his response. Verse 33. When Jesus saw Mary weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit, and he was troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. In verse 35, Jesus wept. Shortest verse in the Bible, right? The phrase there that he uses, deeply moved, it's going to come up again in the next couple verses. Deeply moved is literally the angry snorting of a horse is what that means. I won't demonstrate for you this morning, all right? My allergies are bad, but not bad enough to do that for you, okay? It's the angry snorting of a horse. And what's interesting about this is not just Jesus weeping uncontrollably because he's simply sad. If you study this out, what it is, it's a anger mixed with sorrow in his weeping. That's what this deeply moved is talking about. You say, well, what is it then that he's angry and sorrowful about? I think there's a few things, and we can't go too deep into this, but you got to hear these things. I think the first thing is that he is operating as our great high priest, like Hebrews chapter 4 says. Hebrews chapter 4 says that we have a high priest who can sympathize with our weakness because he walked the steps that we walk. He endured the things that we have to endure. He experienced real human sorrow. He wasn't just faking it and going through the motions as God. He was truly God and truly man, and he felt what we feel, and he sorrowed the way we sorrow. He's our great high priest. He understands. And so I would tell you today, whatever you're sorrowing about, Jesus gets it. He understands. He weeps here because that's the sorrow piece. I think the other thing is he's showing us that there is a time for us to mourn with people. There's a time for us to be sad and mourn with others, even if we're not necessarily sad in the first place. Now, in our culture, we're terrible at this. In our culture, whenever something sorrowful happens, we like to numb ourselves or distract ourselves with some other activity or music or movies or whatever that is to get our minds off of it versus truly mourning. Jesus is showing us here, there is a time to truly mourn, and it's okay for us to mourn. When terrible things happen in our world, we should mourn with those around us. That's us being like Christ to them when we mourn with them. You know, one of the saddest things with that situation down in Texas, that shooting at the elementary school, you know one of the saddest things I saw? It was clearly a very sad situation altogether that those children's lives, those innocent children's lives were taken, for sure. What really hacked me off, though, is to hear Christians on the heels of hearing that report of innocent kids being slaughtered, instead of weeping and mourning and asking God to intervene, you start talking about the NRA and your gun laws. Like, I'm just telling you, that's sick, all right? That is sick, and it's not like Jesus. And I'm all for having your freedom to bear arms and all the things the amendments allow us to do. But if your first response to a situation like that was so dark and tragic is, I'm going to keep my guns, instead of getting down and mourning with those people, something is wrong with your heart. And I love you enough to tell you that this morning. Listen, Jesus, he mourned. He wept with those who were weeping as our great high priest. But the other thing I'd say too, and we'll move on, but Jesus, I believe here, is angry at the results of sin and unbelief. Because everything those people here in the story are experiencing in this darkest moment of death, in this moment where they're experiencing the hopelessness and the finality and the pain and the fear of this thing called death, as Jesus is processing all of it in front of the people, I know that what he was thinking in his heart was, this is not how it was meant to be. You weren't meant to have to experience death. You weren't meant to experience this kind of pain. You weren't meant to in the beginning. This world was not designed for you to have to go through this hopeless, tragic situation. But because of the sin of mankind, you're having to deal with this. Because of the unbelief of mankind, you're having to endure this right now. And it made Jesus angry at the sin and unbelief that was present in the world. And so he mourns and he weeps here with those who weep. Verse 36, we're almost done. And the Jews said, see how he loved him. Some of them said, could not he that opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? Yes, he could have. But as we've already seen, love doesn't always do what's asked or what's requested. It does what's best, okay? Jesus once more, verse 38, Jesus once more, deeply moved, there's our phrase again, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Boy, does that description sound familiar of one that's coming later on. He says, take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there's a bad odor because he's been in there for 4 days. She still does not get it, okay? She's like, Jesus, it stinks in there. I grew up reading the King James Version. I love how it translates it. It says, by now he stinketh. Isn't that funny? You guys that have middle school boys, you can use that on them, okay? Like you haven't showered for 3 days, that Axe body spray is not doing its job, by now you stinketh. Okay, you can use that on them. And then just tell them you love them, okay? But she says, no, he's rotten in there. He stinks. Like she still doesn't get what Jesus is about to do. Like he says, I'm going to do something miraculous. I'm going to show you my power. I'm going to display my glory. And you're still worried about the stinkiness of the tomb. Verse 40, then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believe, you'll see the glory of God? You'll see him revealed for who he really is. You'll see his power on display. So they took away the stone, and then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you've heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. And when he had said this, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. He said his name specifically. Did you notice that? Charles Spurgeon said that Jesus' authority was so great that if he hadn't said Lazarus' name, the whole graveyard would have woke up and walked out. If you've ever been to this part of the world, this whole side of the hillside where they're at here is nothing but a bunch of tombs with stones rolled over them. Dead bodies, dead bones. And Jesus' authority over death was so great that he specifically calls out Lazarus so that we don't have some terrible Walking Dead situation on the side of the Mount of Olives. He says, Lazarus, get up and come out. Verse 44, the dead man Lazarus came out, his hands and his feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. And Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. Listen, write it down, number 3. We're done. When Jesus speaks, dead things come back to life. When Jesus speaks, dead things come back to life. Listen, the people that were standing there, the mourners that were hired, the people from the village that had heard Jesus had come over, Mary and Martha's extended family, their crazy uncle, everybody's out there. Tons of people standing around. They're all crying and they're sniffling, unexpected that anything good can come out of this death. Nothing good can come from this situation. They thought it was all over. Nobody comes back from death, especially after 4 days. And here comes Lazarus walking out of the tomb alive. Now, you know Lazarus' response whenever he took off the grave clothes. You know what his response was, don't you? What? No! He was the only one sad there that day at the miracle. He had been in heaven for 4 days on vacation, all right? I mean, think about that. He'd been out there just settling into his mansion for 4 days. And then he hears over the intercom, he's like getting his furniture where he wants it. You know, he's programming his Chick-fil-A cabinet. I'm going to have that in my mansion. I'm just going to push a button and it's going to give me a fresh, hot Chick-fil-A sandwich on command. I don't know how it's going to happen. It's heaven. It's going to happen, okay? He got all that set up and he hears over the intercom. God calls him to his front office desk, right? Said, Lazarus, listen, I know it's been good. It's been a good run. But there's some people down there praying for you. There's some people down there that believe. And he's like, God, are you serious? Okay, I guess I'll submit to the God of the universe and go back. But seriously, though, think about it. I mean, what an incredible story. And when Jesus speaks, dead things come back to life, don't they? Listen, let me ask you this question today, and we'll wrap it up here. Is there an area of your life that needs a resurrection? Is there some area in your life today that is dead that needs to be brought back to life? Maybe it's in your marriage, and that thing has been on the rocks, and that's an understatement. Maybe it's a situation with your children. Maybe it's a teenager that's wayward or an adult child that's wayward or some situation with your finance. I don't know what the situation is that you came in here carrying, but all of you did come in carrying situations today. Do you need a resurrection today? Maybe it's an area of sin or an area of addiction that has been owning you. Did you notice what Jesus said in the passage there as he closes it out? He says, take off the grave clothes and let him go. You know why he said that? Take off the grave clothes and let him go. See, the grave clothes were what identified Lazarus with death. You didn't wrap living people up in grave clothes. Those grave clothes also restrained him and held him back. They wrap him up pretty tight in those things where you couldn't move. You couldn't go about daily living wrapped up in those grave clothes. And Jesus says, take off the grave clothes and let him go. You know what he was saying there in that? He's telling us as believers, take off those grave clothes of sin that used to be what held you down. They used to be what defined you, but now, because I'm the resurrection and the life, and you know me and have believed in me, those things no longer identify you, and those things no longer have power over you. Amen? Lay down your grave clothes. Take them off. Why are you carrying around that sin? Why are you carrying around that addiction? You have power over that today because of what Jesus has done in your life. He says, let him go walk in newness of life, but you got to get rid of the grave clothes first. Jesus is giving you that power if you're a believer here today. And then I would say for the person here that maybe hasn't trusted Jesus yet, you've not placed your faith in Jesus yet. Are you tired of being dead? Are you tired of stinking in the grave? Are you tired of your life not headed in that direction you were hoping or wanting, and everything in your life that you touch ends up messing up because you've been trying to take control of it on your own? Are you tired of that? Are you ready for a resurrection? Because Jesus has prescribed a way for resurrection in your life today if you'll believe in him. The cross of Jesus Christ and what he accomplished and nothing more. No works you can do, nothing you can contribute, because dead people have nothing to contribute. Simple belief in Jesus Christ, faith in Jesus Christ today will bring a resurrection in your life if you don't know Jesus. Would you believe in him and would you receive him? I love this story of life. One of my favorite passages to preach on. I've preached on it many times. I love it because what it shows us is that in the darkest of situations, in the most hopeless of situations, when Jesus is present, we can truly say and believe, it's not over yet. Amen? It's not over yet. See, for the believer today, you can take to the bank what Jesus stated at the beginning of the passage. This sickness will not end in death. Now see, maybe in this life physically, he's going to have to call you home at some point. There's something that's going to have to take us out. There'll be a point at which maybe a physical situation does take you out in this life, but you have eternal life forever with God. And so no matter what happens in this life, good or bad, it's not over yet. You get eternity with God in his presence with that one your soul longs for the most. And so today, no matter how scary your situation, how painful your circumstances, how bleak the experience or the outlook or the prognosis, our story as believers can never end in death. Jesus has the authority over every part of your life and can resurrect anything in your life. He's not scared of the dark. There's no depth of darkness that shakes Jesus. Believe that today. And believe with all your heart. It's not over yet. Amen? Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, thank you for your word, for the power of it. Thank you that no matter what we face, we can believe and stake our lives and tether our hearts to the truth that it's not over yet. Not because of any value we add, but because of the power and authority of Jesus Christ in our lives. He demonstrated in this story his power over the darkest part of our human existence. And if that's the case, then he can give us victory and resurrection in any area of our life that we need today. We believe that today, Jesus. We ask for that today, Jesus. God, I pray this morning that addictions and the chains of those addictions will be broken in Jesus' name. God, I pray that there would be healing and restoration in relationships this morning in the power, in the name of Jesus today. God, I pray that people that are lost this morning, that have been searching, that are tired of being dead and stinking in the grave, God, that you would call them out to salvation today and to a new life with Jesus. God, we ask for this today. In faith, believing that you can do it. Thank you that we serve a Savior with this kind of power and this kind of authority. Thank you that we don't have to fear anything that comes our way. Because no matter the what, we know and have believed in the right who. And that's Jesus Christ. Thank you, Lord. We love you. And thank you for the work you're doing in your people's hearts even right now in this moment. We ask it in Jesus' name. And all God's people said, amen. Hey, it's not over yet.